computer. There we go, everybody. Recording in progress. So if you don't want to be visible on the recording, turn your camera off. Otherwise, this will be going out to everybody who signed up. I will probably also pop it up onto YouTube and things like that. So obviously, just shout if you don't want to, just turn your camera off if you don't want to be visible on the recording. Somebody's not muted. I can hear some mumbling. So if everyone can please just make sure that they mute themselves, that would be really, really helpful. And I'll probably just keep saying that ad infinitum as we go through. Right, just let a few more people in and we're just about to...
Sorry, I've muted it.
No, you haven't.
Press it again and that will mute you.
We can hear you. Oh, I think I keep muting people as they mute themselves. Right. Let's try and crack on then, and I can let other people in as they come in. So just a very quick intro for anybody who doesn't know me. I'm assuming most of you probably do. You probably all come, lots of people have come from the big Sustainableish group. Oh, there's 2 more people. I should have had somebody to help me on this call, shouldn't I? So I could have somebody letting people in while I'm busy chatting. So I always kick off by saying I am an ordinary knackered mum of 2. We've got 2 boys who are now 13 and 10. And I always say that because I think we often feel like we've got to be a bit like David Attenborough or Greta or somebody like that in order to make a difference, and we absolutely don't. Guys who've just come in, if you can mute yourselves, that would be really helpful. I can hear a little bit of background noise. So 10 years ago, it was September 2012, so nearly 10 years ago, I dragged the rest of the family, so our boys were 1 and 4 or something at the time, into a year buying nothing new. And it started just as quite a naive challenge, just thought it might be quite fun, and ended up now, here we are 10 years later, and we've got this amazing online community around this idea of Sustainableish, which is imperfect eco action. There's about 60,000 people across all the different social media platforms, and just a very inspiring and empowering community to be a part of. Off the back of that year, I had so many amazing opportunities. I'll show you in a little minute some of the sort of press coverage that came from it. I was invited to do a TEDx. Well, guys, if you can mute yourselves, please. It's quite distracting with all the banging and clattering in the background. That would be really lovely. Thank you. I now have a podcast called the Sustainableish Podcast, and I'm lucky enough to have had 2 books published, the Sustainableish Living Guide and the Sustainableish Guide to Green Parenting. And I keep saying last year, because this is what I was saying in 2021, but now we're in 2022, aren't we? So in 2020, founded the Knackered Mums Eco Club, which is my membership community for anyone wanting a little bit more support, resources on tap. I know we've got lots of those lovely knackered mums here tonight. Right. I can still hear somebody rustling. I don't know who it is. Right, so it all started, like I said, nearly 10 years ago. This is a very blurry screenshot, and this is the original blog I did called My Make, Do and Mend Year. It started September 2012. I'd never blogged before in my life. I didn't really know what Twitter was. I wasn't really particularly up on social media, anything like that. Didn't really think anyone would be reading this. It was just a really basic, really free WordPress site. But it's and decided I was going to do this challenge, and I was going to blog every day for the year, which actually in hindsight was much harder than the actual doing of the not buying anything new. And as I said, it started out as a really naive challenge. I just thought, I had 2 little small children at home, probably a little bit going out of my mind, wanting to find something, I guess, maybe for me. Decided I wanted to blog about something, read about somebody doing something very similar lady called Susie Prince, or Susie Price, I think she was, who was doing a secondhand safari. And I read about it in a magazine. I thought, that sounds fun. And I just discovered Free Cycle and Freegal, and I thought, oh, let's see if we can give this a go. And sort of spoke to my husband about it. And I'm someone who has a lot of, air quotes, amazing ideas a lot of the time. And my husband sort of looked at me and just went, all right, yeah, no, that sounds good. And sort of, I think he was pretty assured that I would find something else to be excited about and forget about it. And then I brought it up another few weeks later and he was like, oh God, we're really going to have to do this. And so we sort of sat down and we thrashed out some rules. And I know there's lots of questions about rules and things, so I'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. I'm quite impatient, so I was far too impatient to wait until, you know, the January, which, like we're doing this time, would be a sensible time to start. So we started in the September, and like I said, I kept a blog about it, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. Like, I know that's a massive cliche, but it absolutely was one of the best things I've ever done. Obviously, other than having the children and all that kind of malarkey. I was really surprised. Got quite a lot of sort of press coverage and positive press coverage from it. So this one on the left hand side, I think, was in the Sun. That was in the Express, and as I said, I was invited to do a TEDx talk, and the theme for the TEDx talk was everyday radicals. And I remember thinking, God, I'm not a radical. Like, I'm quite good. I park between the lines. I do as I'm told. But just this idea that actually not buying something in our very consumer society is a really radical act. And I kind of really embrace that now. And it's one of my reasons actually for sort of wanting to do this again. It's really quite disruptive of the status quo. So there were some highlights, like our kids, as I said, were 4 and 1. So the eldest had just started at preschool. So there were an awful lot of 4-year-old birthday parties to go to. And we'll talk a little bit more about gifts later on, because I know that's something some people sort of worry about and things. I learned to patch. I learned to sew on buttons. I learned to do lots of really kind of, basic mending stuff that prior to that, I could sew. I'd learned to sew when we had our eldest, but I just thought that I couldn't, if I mended something, it would break again. So I just used to save all the broken stuff up and then give it in a pile to my mother-in-law when she came round. And so I actually was like, well, I've called this thing my Make, Do and Mend year. I need to actually get on and do some mending. So I forced myself to sort of patch the kids' jeans, because obviously little children crawling around a lot on the floor. I was crawling around a lot on the floor. We had a lot of jeans with holes in them. But I remember before the first day sending our eldest into preschool with these patches on his jeans and actually really feeling quite nervous about it, quite worried that I was going to be judged, that I was going to, what were they going to think of us? Because I remembered seeing kids with patches on their jeans when I was growing up, but I couldn't remember having seen, friends of my kids with patches on their jeans, and I was really worried about it. And obviously in hindsight it was absolutely nothing to worry about, but it's funny the kinds of things that go through your minds. So there are a few of the gifts and things I made. I honestly now have no idea how I did that with 2 kids under 4, 4 and under, and trying to do a blog every day. And I think I was still working part-time as well. So like, I honestly now look back and think, what on earth I must have been some kind of superwoman, which clearly I'm not. And then that picture there of me at River Cottage, that was one of our, so I'll talk a little bit about experience gifts, because that's one of the things, as not a thing. So my family and my husband, everybody clubbed together and bought me a day bread making at River Cottage, and honestly that was such an amazing experience. I still use the skills now. It was brilliant. So I am a firm advocate now of sort of experiences over things for gifts. And guys who've just joined, if you can just mute yourself, that would be really lovely. But there were also some lowlights. So some of you I know have been following me since that year and will probably remember the egg box Christmas tree. So the picture on the left there is what I found on Pinterest and I was trying to recreate. The picture on the right, I should have let you guess actually which was mine, shouldn't I? The picture on the right is our actual underwhelming egg box Christmas tree, which did make me cry. Not happy tears. So that was a little bit of a low light. I also tried to crochet. I learned to crochet and tried to crochet a hat, which was a bit of a disaster, as you can see. And also for Christmas, I tried to make the kids, dinosaur hats. I've seen them again on Pinterest. Pinterest has an awful lot to answer for. And I measured the children's heads. I don't know how I sort of told them, without telling them what I was doing. I sort of measured their heads, dutifully made this lovely hat. And the only thing that was big enough to go on was the teddy bear. So that was a little bit of a failure as well. But what it really did was really force me a little bit, I think, to confront the climate crisis. So we weren't even calling it the climate crisis then. So this is nearly 10 years ago, 2012, pre-Greta, pre-Blue Planet 2, pre-Extinction Rebellion, all kinds of things. Just getting a bit of noise there. Can somebody just make sure they're muted? Yeah, really sort of, I think prior to that, I'd been looking away somehow, not deliberately, not consciously, but I think probably in a way that lots of us might be now, feeling it was too big, too overwhelming, not something for me to be, not something for you know, how on earth could I possibly make a difference, because I'm just one person and we're just one family, and surely this needs governments to be doing big things and it needs businesses to be doing big things. So sort of looking away from it, a little bit of burying my head in the sand, yeah, just this feeling that I couldn't possibly make a difference. And actually, and I distinctly remember partway through the year having a big panic and thinking, what on earth are we doing? How can I possibly think that we're making a difference? How can one little family make a difference? And then sort of slowly almost sort of working through that and realizing that I couldn't unlearn all these things that I'd been learning throughout the year, and coming up with this, you know, this quote from Jane Goodall really kind of sums up how the sort of biggest takeaway I think I had from that year. So this idea, so Jane Goodall says, you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. So this idea, you know, everything we do makes a difference. Everything we do, everything we eat, everything we buy, it makes a difference. And we have to decide, and a lot of the time we get to decide, the really empowering thing is we get to decide what kind of a difference we want to make. And so that was my takeaway. People, you know, lots of people said to me after the year ended, oh, what did you learn? What did you take away from it? And this was that real sense of responsibility, that real sense that my decisions do count, my actions do count. And actually this idea that, you know, I can't control anybody else's decisions or actions. I can't really, if I'm honest, control my kids' actions a lot of the time. But actually the only person whose actions I do have, you know, complete control over is my own. And so actually when I can, being able to make different decisions, better decisions more of the time. So this isn't about making the perfect decision every single time, because I don't think any of us can do that. And sometimes we will just need to buy something because we've forgotten something, or we've got a certain budget or whatever it might be. But actually the fact that you know, we can slow down and we can make different decisions more of the time. So if you've got any comments, any questions or anything as I'm going along, do just pop into the chat, because I'm always really conscious that otherwise it's just me talking at you for a while. But we are going to have time for some questions at the end as well. Guys who've just joined, if you can just mute, that would be perfect. So just going to run through now the whys, why you might want to do a year buying nothing new, the whats, the kind of practicalities of how it works, and the how, you know, what are some of the top tips and all those kinds of things. So I've got 3 sections, I guess, of whys. That's how many whys there are. So let's start off with the I don't know if these are obvious. It feels really obvious, and I think probably to everybody that's here today it does. But if anybody saw Don't Look Up over the Christmas period, I would really recommend it. It's a great film, air quotes comedy. It's a sort of satire, it's a parody. But I think a lot of people are still coming to this realization almost that, you know, we are in a climate emergency. We're also in an ecological emergency. So we're you know, we're having we're at a 6th mass extinction essentially of species going extinct because as a result of human activity. Hold on, there we go. We need to halve emissions between now and 2030. So that's what, 8 years now, if we're going to try and keep global temperature rises below 1.5 degrees, which is what the Paris Agreement in 2015 set out to do. Our role as individuals in that is that we also need to reduce our emissions. We need to halve the average carbon footprint of an individual. So in the UK, our average global footprint is around 9 or 10 tons of carbon dioxide a year. But because we have a higher average footprint than the average globally, which I think is around 5.5, we actually need to get down to 2.3 tons of carbon per year by the end of 2030. So that sounds quite daunting to go from 9 or 10 to 2.3, but it is really doable. No one's expecting you to do it. No one's expecting you to do it tomorrow or overnight. We've got 8 years, but we do need to start on that. And actually slowing down our consumption of stuff is a really great place to start, because certainly what I found was that, you know, having to be so much more thoughtful and mindful about what we were buying just trickles out into so many other things as well. Right, Liz, Jacqueline, if you can just mute, that would be perfect. Right, so a couple of stats just to sort of emphasize this. Extending the life of clothes by just 9 months of active use can reduce their carbon, water and waste footprints by around 20 to 30%. Now I've actually I snuck in just under the wire with some new socks, but actually I ordered them from Vinted, so they count as secondhand, because although it says they're new and unused, they're being passed on by somebody. I don't know if they were unwanted Christmas gifts, but my socks, I've very proudly kept them going. I've sewn little patches on the bottom. I've been kind of wearing them with holes and things like that, and every time I sort of look at myself and think, this is just ridiculous, just get some new socks. I'm kind of reminded of stats like this, and just this idea that actually, you know, every day, every week that we keep something going for a little bit longer, it really does help to reduce the carbon footprint of it. And this one here, this is actually from a few years ago, so I would love to know if it's been updated. But if we used every phone sold this year, and I think bearing in mind this was probably about 2018, this stat from, for just a third longer, in a couple of years we could prevent the carbon emissions equal to Ireland's annual emissions. I mean, that's bonkers, isn't it? So you know, this idea that we need to upgrade our phones, we need to get in the new model every time Apple tells us to, that kind of thing. If we can just keep them going for just a third longer, I think those are really sort of quite powerful, those two stats. Right, mute some more people. So another sort of set of whys: consumption is now a bigger driver of environmental breakdown than population. So you might hear a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, it's population, there's too many people on the planet. Actually, it's more to do with the amount of stuff that we're buying, and particularly the amount of stuff that people in the developed world are buying. The average person in a rich country, so here in the developed world and in the West, consumes 13 times as much as the average person in the poorer country. So so somebody, so I've got 2 children, somebody in somewhere like Bangladesh would need to have 26 children in order to have the same impact as my family and I. In the past 20 years, which in my head I feel like is the 1980s, but it isn't, it's the year 2000, isn't it? The number of garments purchased per person has increased more than 60%, and the lifespan of those clothes has decreased by half. So fashion has absolutely skyrocketed, and I think, and actually consumption in general has skyrocketed over the last 20 years. And I think that's a combination of things. I think it's more disposable income, for obviously not for everybody, but for a lot of people, but also massively, I think, advertising and social media. So if you think, you know, smartphones, I think was it 2007? I heard on the radio today the first iPhone came out, and if you think how much more visible and conspicuous our consumption is now, and how much more we have that that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that wanting to keep up, that seeing all these things, all these interiors, all these clothes that we would never really have seen before, and then we're like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. So, you know, it really does feel like, I think social media has an awful lot of good points, but it also has an awful lot to answer for in terms of this driving of consumption that we're seeing. Click. Our collective stuff, so all the stuff, the things that we own, now weighs more than all the living things on Earth. That's quite scary, isn't it? And our consumption is leading directly to obviously to climate change, to species extinction, to water pollution, to air pollution, to deforestation. You know, it's not just the thing when it's in our house and then what happens to it when it's in landfill. It's all the resources, all the carbon, all the energy and things that has gone into making them and then transporting them over to us. So this is a great quote, and I was sort of looking to try and source it. David Attenborough definitely said this, but I think somebody else said something similar in the 70s as well. Anyone who thinks that you can have infinite growth in a finite environment is either a madman or an economist. So, you know, we live on a finite planet with hard boundaries. If anybody's come across Earth Overshoot Day, this is a day in the year where some clever scientists have calculated, you know, how grammatically incorrect, how many resources the Earth can replenish safely within a year, and then the point with which we overshoot that. When I first learned about it, when we were doing our original Make, Do and Mend year, I think it was sort of towards the end of August. It's now definitely, I think, towards the beginning of August. I think there was a little blip for the pandemic for 2020, but then it's come forwards again, and it's coming forwards every year, and they break it down by country as well. So here in the UK, I think our overshoot day is either March or May, I think, and there's somewhere like Qatar or somewhere like that that actually overshoots in January. So it's really scary, isn't it, the idea that we're kind of borrowing all these resources essentially from our children and from our grandchildren. And then these were some sort of really more personal reasons that I came up with when I wrote a blog post about sort of why buy nothing new. And this idea that actually, you know, we start to really appreciate what we already have. So I'll talk a little bit later about doing something like a wardrobe audit and stuff like that. But, you know, when you've got to go to because I'm going to be honest with you, it is a bit more trouble to try and find something secondhand. So when you've got to spend a little bit of extra time or be a bit more patient or whatever, you really start to think, oh, do you know what, actually, maybe that jumper that I was getting a bit bored of will just do the job just as well. You know, you really start to develop this sense of appreciation around the things that you already have. You get to learn new skills. So like I said, I learned mending, patching, sewing on buttons, darning, all these terrible cliches, but actually they've stood me in really good stead, and you know, have saved probably so much money in terms of things that we've been able to rescue and keep using for a lot longer. Just letting a few more people in. Hello guys, welcome. There is an undeniably satisfying, dare I say, smug feeling when you fix something or you finally find something secondhand that you've been looking for ages. There is nothing that quite beats it. I remember the washing machine was making a hideous noise, and it's just that, like, oh God, that's 300 quid, that's 400 quid, you know, we're just gonna have to get a new washing machine. And so my husband hit Google or Ecosia, like using Ecosia, and went on YouTube and found a video that said it might be these little things called these brushes that had worn down. Ordered some new ones from eBay for about £1.50, £2, put them in, fixed the washing machine. Like, and ordinarily I think we'd have just gone, oh, broken, bad, do you know, things like that. So yeah, it is a really, really satisfying thing. And you know, I always say when things are broken, you can't make it any worse, so you might as well have a little go. That's my mantra anyway. You get to discover and explore new kind of air quotes retail outlets. So you know, I braved our local auction house during our year buying nothing new. Started going to car boots quite regularly. There's a great big, I'm in the southwest, and there's this massive, I don't know if they're back on now after COVID, but these massive kind of flea markets at the Bath Showground. So, you know, and all these places that I probably wouldn't have gone to, all these experiences, these different ways of buying that we've got to do. And when you're there somewhere like this enormous big flea market and you're looking around and there's sofas and there's phone boxes and there's stuffed bears and there's clothes and there's shoes, you just think, my God, there is so much stuff already. Like, we could just stop making things now and probably be absolutely fine. That's the scary thing. You get to save money. I reckoned we saved, we should have really kept a record of it, and I'm planning to this time round, but I reckoned we saved about £2,000. That's a conservative estimate during our year buying nothing new. So, you know, it really is a big money saving thing. And what I'm planning to do, and I've done a little table that I'll share with you guys, is to sort of, you know, keep a record of everything that we buy, and we buy secondhand, and then try and find out what the retail price would have been and think about what the savings would have been. And then what my plan is to do is then to donate that to, you know, a carbon positive or climate positive project. You get to become a change maker. So I talked about this idea that, you know, you're gently disrupting, of being an everyday radical, you're gently disrupting the status quo. We live in a very consumer driven, very disposable society, and the whole time we are being bombarded by messages to buy new the whole time. We are being drip fed this idea that our lives will be better, we will be happier, we will be prettier. I don't know what it is, but you know, that we will be better people if we have X, Y, and Z thing, and that we've got to keep up. I did a brilliant podcast with JD McKinnon, who's written a brilliant book called The Day the World Stops Shopping. And he talks in there about these kind of quite deep psychological drivers we have to kind of keep up, to be one of the herd, all that kind of thing. And so this idea that actually we're saying no very gently, you know, we're gently saying no. We're just sort of really gently shaking the world, disrupting that status quo. You know, some people might like to see, you know, a big 2 fingers up to the man or whatever it might be, but that kind of thing, I quite like that idea of being a little gentle rebel. And you create this whole new mindset. So I will talk about this again as we go on. There is no failure in this project, in this challenge, in this year. What we're doing is we're trying to slow down how we consume. So in his book, JB McKinnon talks about his experiment is they sort of everybody consumption falls by 25%. And apparently they did sort of modeling and stuff on it, and that would just completely tank the economy. So what they then tweaked it to was consumption falling by just 4%. But actually, when you think consumption is rising year on year on year, you know, that's probably more impactful than it feels. But what we're doing is we're just trying to create this new mindset that just slows us down. We've got so tuned into Amazon and convenience and new and buy, and we can get it tomorrow and we can get it for cheap and we can do this and we can do that. But actually, the most powerful thing I found about this challenge was that because I couldn't just chuck something in the trolley while I was doing the supermarket shop, because I couldn't just chuck it into an Amazon basket or whatever, it forced me to slow down. So a lot of that knee-jerk, very unconscious buying that I think, you know, we probably all are a little bit guilty of, a lot of those impulse buys just had to stop. And that was hugely powerful. And that becomes, you know, a new habit and a new mindset. And you get to create these ripples of change. We talk about ripples all the time in the Knackered Mums Eco Club. And this idea that actually us doing something and then being seen to be doing it or talking about it or whatever creates these little ripples. It sparks off little ideas and thoughts in other people's heads. And somebody might bounce up to us in 6 months' time and say, oh my God, I heard about you doing that year buying nothing new, and I decided I was going to have a go and not buy any new clothes for a month or something like that. And you all these things that, you know, you'd maybe posted something on social media and thought it was just tumbleweed and nobody was really that bothered, but actually that you've got these little ripples of change that are spreading out from the changes that you're making. So what we're doing is we are becoming part of a more circular economy. So you might have heard these phrases, linear economy and circular economy. At the moment, we have a very linear economy. And there's a great little film, if anybody has seen it or wants to have a look at it, called The Story of Stuff by Annie Leonard. And she talks about this really eloquently, but in a really fun way as well. It's quite a nice one to show to older children. And this idea that, you know, we dig stuff out of the ground, we make stuff, we use it, we throw it away. And there are some scary stats around, you know, how long things actually stay in use for. And what we need to transition to as quickly as we can is this idea of a circular economy, so that things are just staying, you know, the things are staying in use for longer, but then the resources are being harvested and reused and that kind of thing. And we're getting to do our bit to contribute towards that. So the what, I would love to know actually your whys, whack them into the chat. If you've got whys and if you've got different ideas and different things that are motivating you to have a go at this. While I have a slug of tea, just another reminder to mute because I can hear somebody's door slamming or something else that's going on there. So we're going to talk about the what, we're going to talk about how this thing actually works. And the thing that I love about this most is that you get to make up your own rules. So nobody is going to come around to you and say, you know, there's no buy nothing new police. Nobody's going to come round and have a go at you. Nobody's going to come round and tell you off. So, you know, that's what you get to do. So we had our own set of rules, and I'll tell you what we had for our original year, and we've got a slightly tweaked set of rules for this one. But let me see. So you could decide. So I'm doing the second-hand only version, but I think some people have interpreted nothing, you know, nothing new in 22 as buying nothing. You can absolutely go for that if you want. I might be tempted to do it if we didn't have kids, but kids have this pesky method of kind of growing, which means that they do inevitably need different things and new things for school and all that sort of thing. So we're going with the second hand only. If anybody wants to really go for it, you could do nothing new. There's a brilliant lady called Michelle McGarr who did a year of a no spend year, and she's written a book about it, which you might be able to find secondhand. Michelle McGarr, the no spend year. So that might be a really good one to have a look at if you're going to try and do that. I think she also did, like, so she wouldn't use services, she wouldn't use hairdressers, all those kinds of things. She wouldn't go out for a drink. Like, it was really quite hardcore. I'm not sure that I would be ready for that. Do you want to do everything, or do you want to just do clothes, or do you want to just do tech, or do you want to just do something else? So, you know, and that's absolutely fine. If you just want to have a go at clothes for a year or less, that's absolutely fine. Secondhand clothes for a year is big impact. Fast fashion, or the fashion industry, is about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So if you really want to make inroads onto to fashion, then that's a brilliant place to start. Are you just going to do it for you, or are you going to jag the rest of the... Jax, can you mute? I think it's, I don't know why I can't mute you. I've tried muting you several times, but I think it's you who's banging around. So if you can mute, that would be perfect. So do you just want to do it for you, or are you going to drag the rest of the family along? So I said at the time when we did our original year, the kids were 1 and 4, something like that, you know, not really old enough to kind of appreciate what was going on, and vaguely, you know, did as they were told, and were just as happy with a second-hand car from the car boot sale as they were with something brand new. But, and I remember saying at the time, this would be a very different experience with teenagers or with older children. So now this is what I'm doing. So we've got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. And so I did kind of have to see if they were on board. I said, look, guys, this is what I would really like to do. Do you want to join in or not? And I was really surprised, actually. They didn't give it much thought. I did preface it with, you can have one exception each. I thought that I would let them pick one exception each for something that they wanted to do. So that's what we've done. So there's myself, my husband, the 2 boys are doing it. They've got one exception each. To my, I don't say to my shame, they are absolute, and a lot of you, this will mean nothing to you. They're really into Warhammer, which is these tiny little plastic models that you paint. They're plastic, they drive me insane, but they're off screens while they're doing it, so it's great. So they've said, and you can't really buy them secondhand because other people will have already painted them and things like that. So that's going to be their exception. So that's what we've decided. But, you know, you might decide that you just want to do it for you, or it's you and your partner and you're not worrying about the kids, that kind of thing, or whatever you want to do. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You might, I've seen quite a few people saying in the group that they're just going to ease in and just try a month and see how they get on, or they're going to do it month by month, you know, sort of do January, see how you get on, then have a go at February, then have a go at March. And so you could do a month, you can do 3 months, you can do a year. The very act of committing to doing it, and I think if you can do at least a month, I think is enough to have really start to shift that mindset and to remove some of those knee-jerk, impulse, middle of Lidl, IKEA marketplace, whatever it might be, to remove a lot of that sort of knee-jerk consumption and to really start some different thought processes going. So you might say, what are your, so you know, you will have some exceptions. We had some exceptions when we did our first year, and we've got some exceptions when we're doing this year. So the first time around, like I said, the kids were really little. We did a whole year. We said everything's secondhand except food, because I am not in any way self-sufficient enough to not be buying food. We said toiletries and medicines. Actually, I did end up making my own deodorant that year. And I think we probably had a shed load of kind of bog off offers that we'd got. You know, this was pre kind of trying to do things plastic free and stuff. So we had a load of stuff to get through, but we said toiletries and medicines. Consumables, so things like glue, paint. Somebody was asking in the group, I think, about sort of beauty products and things like that. So yeah, you know, anything that you sort of use and you use up, for me, that's okay. We said as well that we could get new parts for something that to fix something that breaks. And at the time, because the kids were really tiny, I didn't want to end up sort of breaking their feet by you know, forcing their little tiny fragile feet into shoes that didn't fit. So that was one of our big exceptions last time round. And we said underwear, because we drew the line at secondhand pants. I think now I might, if I do decide I need some pants partway through, I might try and look for some new with tags. You know, you can get that on eBay or Vinted or places like that. So I might have a go. I've also seen that Fran, who's in the Napperman's Eco Club, she just rustled up a couple of pairs of pants on the sewing machine for her, for one of her kids. So that might be something to have a go at as well. And so this time around, as I said, the kids are a bit bigger. They are on board. So they've picked Warhammer as their exception. We're going to do a year. We're doing secondhand purchases only, except food, toiletries and medicines, consumables. I've said school stuff for the kids if we've exhausted all other possibilities, because sometimes you have to get specific branded stuff. Sometimes they'll come home and say, oh, I've lost my mouth guard. Well, we probably wouldn't buy secondhand mouth guards anyway, but, oh, you know, I've lost this, or I need that for next week, and that kind of thing. And I wouldn't want them to be missing out on doing stuff or anything like that. So that's, you know, I've said school stuff for the kids if we've got time and we've looked into all the other things, underwear and the kids' exceptions. So it's absolutely up to you. So have a little think about what your air quotes rules might be and just whack them into the chat. There was some discussion, I think I just saw a bit flash past, and also in one of the groups, about plants. I'm thinking about, I'm so ungreen fingered, but I've been thinking for ages about getting some house plants. So that might be my exception, or I might just end up with loads of baby spider plants and baby aloes from people locally. But, you know, there are ways around these things. If you've got something that you think is going to be a real deal breaker for you, you know, this needs to be a challenge, but it doesn't need to make you miserable. That's not the idea. We're not doing this to make ourselves miserable. So I really, really, really want you to remember that there is no such thing as failure. I know for those of you who haven't found it, I've set up a sort of designated Facebook group for this, for people who are on Facebook. If you just search Nothing New in 22, and I know we're going to have people coming, oh, I failed. There is no such thing as failure. This whole thing is a learning experience. So, you know, if you do end up buying something new, this is going to sound really worthy, but find a couple of minutes to think, well, what happened there? Was it because I ran out of time? Was it because that caught me by surprise? What can I do to try and avoid that next time? So yeah, I think there is absolutely no such thing as failure. So I asked for some FAQs or some questions. I was thinking of some sort of, you know, to have an FAQ post that I'm going to put in the Facebook group, but ask for some questions. These are some of the ones that came up. So do you have any exceptions to the rule? So yeah, I've talked about that, and you can absolutely make your own exceptions. Sue's asked, what do you do if you've been given a shopping voucher for Christmas? And I answered this in the group. Completely up to you. You know, the money's already been spent, I guess, in terms that it's been given to the retailer. Have a look, see what the expiry date is. If it's for, is it for something that you know, that there is something that you would actually need or want? Because it seems pretty pointless kind of just spending it on something that, like, you're not really that fussed about, but you've got to use this voucher. One thing we've done in the past when we've been given Amazon vouchers, if the school sometimes, the kids sometimes get them from school and places like that, or for birthdays, is we've actually then sold them to somebody we know who uses Amazon a lot, and they've just paid us the cash for it. So you might be able to do something like that. How would you phrase it to others who'd be buying you or the family gifts? Now, last time round, I didn't feel like it was my place, or that, you know, to say to people, you can only buy us secondhand gifts. I just viewed it as, this is the challenge that we are doing. So we will be buying secondhand things this year. I mean, I remember that because we started in September, so Christmas came up really early, and our eldest was 4. The only thing he consistently was asking for was a radio controlled car. So actually, and we couldn't find one secondhand, so actually we kind of farmed that out to one of the uncles or something and said, you know, would you be able to buy a secondhand car? Not a secondhand car, a remote control car. I think it was a remote control monster truck or something. It was something really quite specific. So I just left it. I didn't put any pressure. I didn't say, you know, anything to anybody else in terms of you must buy secondhand or things like that. I know lots of people around Christmas have had conversations around, you know, Secret Santas and secondhand Secret Santas and things like that. So, you know, with certain members of the family or whatever, you might feel able to broach it. If you're not, then, you know, don't worry about it. What I was very aware of doing was not making a big long list of all the things I really wanted to get new. So actually, I don't think I made a list that year, and I think it freaked my mum out and really hacked her off, I think. So, you know, maybe if there are some things that you want and you know where they can be found nicely secondhand, you could even pop a link into something, you know, if you've seen something you've been looking for, or it might be that it's something really lovely like a Wyatt and Jack bag. If you guys have come across them, they're a brilliant little business over on the Isle of Wight, and they take old bouncy castles, inflatables, and they make them into gorgeous bags. It's like it's upcycled, so technically you could argue that it's not new, you know, or something like that, that you're really treating yourself to. I would just put that on your Christmas list and see if anybody's kind enough to give it to you. Any tips on stopping your husband just ordering stuff from Amazon? Not really. You know, obviously try and have a conversation. If you want to try and bring the rest of the family on board, ideally have a conversation with partners and say, look, this is the challenge that I'm doing. Do you want to join in with it? If they don't, then you probably just need to let it go, and maybe just try and get a little bit of a head start on things that, because some partners are quite good at like ordering stuff for the family, whereas other partners will just be ordering stuff for themselves. If they're just doing stuff for themselves and they're not interested in joining in, then just let them crack on. If you think they're going to be sort of ordering stuff for the house and for the family, then maybe say, oh, I know we need this. Do you mind if I just have a couple of days to look for something secondhand first before you, and you might or may not be able to kind of preempt it that way. So what are the exceptions? Where do we look? I've got a whole section coming up. What counts as new? That's a really good one. So I've said I'm quite happy to get things that are new with tags off eBay or off Vinted or somewhere like that, as long as it looks like it's just a person who's been gifted something that's the wrong size or they don't really like, and they're, you know, sometimes you will get people who will almost have a business buying up sort of, you know, stock that's not been sold and stuff like that. But, you know, I think if you're still keeping it out of landfill, you haven't contributed to the sort of demand for it at the original checkout point, if that makes sense. So that's my rationale and my thing. But if you don't want to do anything new, that's absolutely fine. But, you know, I will happily order something secondhand that somebody is passing on that they haven't used. I would definitely do that. What about handmade and small business items? Completely again up to you. Now I know that Libby in the Knackered Mums Club, she had a great idea of actually just keeping a track of everything that I think she said of everything that she buys or everything that she needs. You know, and if you can't find it secondhand, obviously a great thing to do is then to look for a handmade or a small business and that kind of thing. So some people will do that. Some people will do, you know, I know people who've, a few people this year who wanted to have a no Amazon Christmas, that kind of thing. So obviously the whole thing is that we're becoming more conscious, we're slowing down, we're thinking a lot more about what we're buying and where we're getting it from. So absolutely, you might say, well, I've exhausted all the other possibilities, but I know that there's this really lush business over here that does it. That's absolutely fine. So just a couple of questions going back about the beginning. What made you decide to try it? I think, as I said, it was just a naive challenge. I'd read about someone else doing it and wanted to have a go. I thought it might be a bit fun, and it opened a whole big can of worms. Was it as hard as you expected? Absolutely not. It was actually far easier than I expected. I was anticipating all the white goods breaking on the stroke of midnight, and they didn't. And actually, you know, once you start to sort of reframe your mindset and you start to just use these other places as your first resort, then it becomes much, much easier. What the rule is around, sorry, just see what that one says. Beauty items. So yeah, I would count them as consumables. You know, you might want to see how long you can eke something out for or whatever. And again, if you are looking for things like makeup and stuff like that, then there are some great ethical and sort of plastic free makeup brands and things like that. So it might be that you want to explore one of them. And this great, anyone know, and I would love to know if anyone knows, of a kind of app or something that you can track this on, because I've gone analog and I've created a little table that I will send out to you guys for you to print out and use as you want, or you can just have a thing on your notes on your phone or something. But wouldn't it be amazing if there was an app so you could do it and you could track how much money you'd save? Because like I said, and then you can either use that money towards something that you've been really saving up for, or donate it to a charity, or use it for you know, a carbon positive scheme, that kind of thing. So when we get onto the how, so this is where we start to dive into the nitty gritty. I would absolutely start as you mean to go on. I would unsubscribe. Especially at the moment, and especially in the run up to Christmas, inboxes were just absolutely bombarded with you know, sales and discounts and special offers. So just unsubscribe. Then the temptation is not even there. Do you know, like there's no FOMO. The temptation is not even there. So go through and unsubscribe. If you miss them after a year, crack on and subscribe back again, but you probably won't even notice that they're gone. Could you delete Amazon? Sue's in the Knackered Mums Club, she did this. She posted a little picture of her deleting her Amazon account. Or if you don't want, you know, if you want to leave it there as your sort of safety blanket, can you delete the app off your phone or move it so it's not on the front page, so it's harder to get to, that kind of thing? That would be really helpful, I think. Have a look, see if you've got a local free cycle or a Freegal group near you. So these started, I mean, they were going quite strong when we did our year 10 years ago, and they're still going strong now. So these are just local groups that have, you know, and you can post wanted, you know, if you've got something you're looking for, you can post that on there, or if you've got something you're giving away, you can post it on there. And you'll be amazed what people are giving away, and you'll be amazed what if you say, oh, I'm looking for a size 6 pair of wellies. Oh, actually, I think we've got one out in the loft. You know, that kind of thing. And we've already seen that actually in the group, because somebody was looking for oven gloves. Oh, where am I going to find oven gloves? And someone else went, oh, we've got 4 pairs. Do you want to have one? And so, you know, always come. You can use it. We can use the group like that as well. Join your local, you know, on Facebook, there are all kinds of buy, sell, swap groups. There is also an amazing project called the Buy Nothing Project, which I can't remember if I think I found out about during our year Buy Nothing year, or it might have been a bit later than that. And it started off in the States, and then I sort of started up the first one over here in the UK, and there are quite a few around the UK now. So have a look. They're Facebook-based groups. They're around this idea of hyper-local gifting, I think they call it. So and trying to create a community around it as well. So rather than just a kind of you know, a very impersonal in search of yes please, it's more of a kind of you know, trying to get to know your neighbors a little bit as well. So have a little look. And I think Tina said in the chat, you know, always have a think about starting one of these things up if you haven't got one yourself. Claire said pre-loved for postage on Facebook, which is a great group. And download the Olio app. So Olio started off life as a food waste app, as a way to help people pass on any food that was going to go to waste to their to people in their local community. And now you can use it a bit like FreeCycle and Freegal, and you can get you know, you can post unwanted gifts or things that you no longer need or want on there, and you can have a look and see as well what's on there. If you have a look and it doesn't seem like there's much going on around you, because I think it's quite big in places like London and things like that, but if you're a bit more rural, it can seem quite quiet. But again, you know, you could be the one who says, oh, come on guys, can everybody download Olio and we can use this, but also post something on there, and you will be you'll be surprised, it will probably be gone within 24 hours. So there are people lurking around there. There is a community waiting to be ignited. So anyone who's been on any of my calls before has probably already seen this image, which is the hierarchy of needs by an amazing Canadian, Sarah Lazarovich, who is just wonderful. You all need to go and check her out. And she's created this hierarchy of needs. And I always say, if I was ever brave enough to get a tattoo, this would be it, but I'm not brave enough. And I just think it's a wonderful reminder that, you know, of all the different options that we've got before we have to think about buying. So the idea is that we start at the bottom with use what you have, and we work our way up through it. So we've got use what you have. So I said, you know, I talked a little bit about sort of auditing and things. So we did a month of fashion in the Knackered Mums Club, and we did a wardrobe audit. So going through, having a look through, emptying your wardrobe, your drawers, everything, getting everything out on the bed and actually having a look at what you've already got, because I think there's a stat that says, we wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time, so there'll be loads of stuff in there that you just don't use, you've grown out of, you've forgotten about, all those kinds of things. So have a look and see what you've already got. It might be that you want to have a bit of a declutter at the same time. This also works for fridges, freezers, kitchen cupboards, kids' toys, all those kinds of things. So it might be that you want to spend the first month or two doing a bit of an audit and working out what you've already got. This use what you have category includes, because I interviewed Sarah on the podcast, and I can link to it in the group for anybody who wants to have a listen, but she says, this includes things like upcycling, repairing, repairing things like I was saying with my socks right at the very beginning, keeping things in use for longer. So if you're not sure how to repair something, have a little look and see if you've got a local repair cafe near you. So these are volunteer run, tend to be pop-up events where there'll be a team of volunteers on hand who will show you how to mend your things or mend your things for you. So anything basically you can carry, so whether that's textiles, small electricals, bric-a-brac, that kind of thing. And there will be people there with the tools and the gizmos to do it. So have a little look, see if you've got one near you. The website is there, you can search and you can see. A lot of them obviously weren't happening during COVID and things, but I think lots of them are starting up again now, so have a look. And upcycle things you've already got, see if jeans are great for kind of, if you're any kind of sewer, to sew things out of. Even just like tins for, I'm just seeing if I've got one here, reusing old tins for pen pots, like real basic things like that. You don't need to be like the crafty goddess of anything, but if you can upcycle some of the things that you've already got. If we move up a layer, we're looking at borrowing. So obviously, friends and family, we've all probably been doing this informally for a long time. Free cycle and Freegal groups, buy nothing groups. Could you set up a borrowing group? I did a talk for WI a couple of years ago, and then they decided they were going to set up a borrowing group between them all, and they were just all sort of listed on there things that they were happy to lend out, and set up this little borrowing group between them, which is fabulous. So you could do that on your street, you could do that within your work community, your school community, anything like that. Oh, Fiona says Olio has a borrowing bit now, so that's amazing. There we go, another thing. There are slightly more sort of formal opportunities for borrowing with things like share shops. So these, I'm just up the road from Frome, which had the first share shop in the country. Several years ago now, and there's Edinburgh Tool Library, which is just amazing, and in London there's a franchise called the Library of Things, and these are popping up. My kids are kicking off, sorry, my husband is with them, and these are popping up all over the place. Like I said, I'm southwest, so I think there's one in Bath, there's one just started in Salisbury, I think there's one in Bristol. So have a little look and see if is one of these things near you. Lots of transition towns have started one. Somebody mentioned about share sheds, they're a very similar concept. So have a little look, see if there's anything like that near you. Obviously, don't forget the library. I've been seeing a lot of library love in the chat there. I adore our local library. It's just my very favourite place to go and spend time. If they haven't got what you want, they will often order it in for you. Lots of them now have audiobook apps that you can subscribe to as well, and you can get audiobooks for free, which is great for things like long car journeys with kids, things like that. You can do clothes rental. So for the kids, Rachel, don't worry, I'm banging on. I know I'm probably going to go over time. So guys, if you do need to leave, please feel free to. I will post the recording out to everybody. I know we're just coming up to 9 o'clock. Lots of clothes rental for kids. But obviously, like, if you've got a posh do to go to or something like that, you can just rent your clothes instead of having to go and buy them. Nappy libraries, great if you're wanting to dip your toe into reusable nappies. You can do toy rental with there's some local places might be lucky enough to have a toy library near them. If not, there's an amazing company called Whirly, which we used for a few years when the kids were a bit younger. Rebecca from Tent Share has just said try Tent Share for renting a tent. That's a great tip, we shall pop that in there. And the Bike Club is a bike rental subscription, and I think there's one for buggies that's just started up relatively recently as well. So loads of different ways that you can borrow or rent the things that you need. If we move up again, we're looking at swapping. Again, all of those things that we've already mentioned, but also have a think, if you have got little kids that are going to like a toddler group, I organised a toy swap with our local toddler group. Really nice, easy thing to do. I would suggest that you set it up in an area where the kids maybe don't go, because otherwise they'll all just go and take their toys that they were bored of and whinge at you for taking them. So, you know, you can set up a toy swap. You could do one once every half term, however you wanted to do it. We did one at school as well when the kids were little at primary school, and just got all the kids to bring in old toys and books and things that they no longer wanted, set them out into the hall after school one day, and they all just got to come in and take what they wanted. They couldn't believe it. They were just absolutely gobsmacked. You can do clothes swaps. I know lots of schools did Christmas jumper swaps in the run up to Christmas, but you can do it for grown-ups as well. And clothes swaps, sometimes called swishes, and they're a great social event, and they're also a really great way people come to them who wouldn't normally come to an eco event or a green event, because it's just a nice social event. We did them when I've organised them before. We've done them in a local pub, in their skittle alley. You know, they've been quite happy to let us use that for free on a Friday night because it gets more people coming into the pub. You know, it's really quite nice and simple. I've got a whole blog post on how to set one up if anybody's interested in doing that, but they're really nice social things to do as well. Thrifting, basically buying stuff secondhand. Let me just have another swig of tea. Probably all really familiar, aren't we, with lots of these? So charity shops, car boot sales, eBay is great. Just remember to go, you can go in the filters and you can change the condition to used, so you only see the used stuff, because there's an awful lot of new stuff now on eBay, isn't there? So you can change the condition on there. Vinted, I think I said earlier, I've developed a mild addiction to. So this is an app. I think it started off with just clothes, but you can get all sorts of things on there. Lots of kids stuff on there. I got loads of the kids' Christmas bits and pieces off there. So that's a great easy one. Depop is another clothes app. I think it's very much for younger people. I feel quite old if I ever do try and go on there, but do have a little look. Loopster I haven't really used, but I've seen a few people recommend. Obviously, like Facebook Marketplace and things. For kids, there's a company called Build a Bundle that allows you to sort of build a bundle of secondhand clothes. So that might be quite a nice way of doing it. And obviously, don't forget your NCT sales if you've got kids and little people, nearly new sales, that kind of thing. You can often pick up big bundles of clothes really quite cheaply. So people are popping things into the chat, which is great. So Diane said refashion. Amanda said I've signed up to Trash Nothing, which links groups like Free Cycle and Free Goal. This is amazing. I need to try and make sure I can save the chat at the end and come and harvest all these links and things. If you're thinking about tech, so things like phones, laptops, that kind of thing, you can have a look on eBay. There's a bit of a buyer beware on, you know, if you're buying from somewhere like eBay, because you don't have a huge amount of comeback. So if you are a bit worried about that kind of thing, then there's organisations like Reboxed and Envirophone. We've had secondhand phones for both of those places. You can get Apple refurbished if you're looking for Apple stuff. And there's quite a lot of places now, local places that will do secondhand laptops and things. We managed to get my son a refurbished one when he needed one during lockdown. Sue says Music Magpie do refurb as well. So yeah, have a little look. You know, there are lots of options, and again, it's saving you quite a lot of money. When you're looking specifically for kids stuff, all the usual places, but one I wanted to highlight was somewhere called Kidder, Kid3R. So this is a website that allows that just sort of facilitates the kind of passing on of kids stuff, you know, especially like sports stuff and music gear and things like that they often buy and use for a short period and then get bored of a particular hobby or whatever. So that might be a one to have a little look at as well. And then we're nearly at the top. We're nearly there, guys. Well done. So make, I always think, you know, if you're not particularly crafty, you think, oh God, I can't make anything. But honestly, you don't need to be particularly crafty in order to do this. I quite like baking, so I will often bake a lot, you know, bake biscuits or little cakes or something like that. But these giant chocolate buttons I do a lot, so just melt a bar of chocolate. If you can get a fair trade one, that's amazing. If you can get a plastic free one, that's amazing. And melt it, smoosh it onto a reusable baking tray and put on some sprinkles, wait for them to set, and then whack them in a jam jar. Or I've done something similar with little shortbread biscuits. So this was for a 6th birthday party. Just make little shortbread 6s and pop them into a little, I was quite pleased with that. There was a little origami bag made out of an A4 sheet of paper, I think. So and I think is it Nancy Birtwistle? She came on the podcast, Nancy from Bake Off, and she's done a great little thing on her website with making little gift boxes from paper. Yes, all the information hopefully should be available after the chat. Lots of people dropping off now, so don't panic. The recording will be available. It won't be too much longer. Presents are difficult. I would say they were probably the hardest thing for the year. So especially I think if, you know, with the little kids, it was all right. And certainly all the kids that I've done giant chocolate buttons or shortbread biscuits for have been really, really pleased with them. So I would absolutely, you know, go with.
I'm gonna take a shower in a little bit.
Oh, someone's taken a shower. Can you mute yourselves, guys? Truffles are really nice and easy. You can do them quite easily if you're doing something for grown-ups. We never throw or recycle a jam jar, so I always keep all the jam jars and then just pop things into there, especially edible bits and pieces for gifting. You could give a secondhand copy of your favorite book or your kids' favorite book. I remember when my brother got married, that's what they asked everybody to do, to buy them a copy of their favorite book. You can re-gift things. You know, I think if the kids have been overwhelmed with stuff at birthdays or Christmas, squirreling things away, just making a note of who's given it so you don't re-gift it back to them, but that's definitely all right in my book. If you're looking, I remember when we were doing our year buying nothing new, we got my brother, he's really into cricket. So we had a look on eBay and managed to find a copy of the Cricketer magazine. If there's any cricketing geeks, they'll be familiar with that, from the month and the year that he was born. So that kind of thing. It's kind of, you know, I don't know if it's antique. I don't know my brother's antique yet, but they're you know, sort of memorabilia, that kind of thing. So that can be quite nice. And I talked as well about gifting experiences. So, you know, it could be like, actually, do you want to come out for afternoon tea? Oh, God, I love afternoon tea. Do you want to come out for afternoon tea with me? Or shall we just go and do something together? Or shall we all go out as a family and do X, Y, and Z? Or if you've got a particular skill, you know, does your friend want to learn to sew or to crochet, or you know, do they want the recipe from your cake that they're always on about? Something like that. It's trying to so someone's saying a bit about doing friend time. That's a really nice 2 hours of friend time, trying to figure out how you'd spend that together. So undeniably, I think presents are a little bit difficult, but there are ways around it. So, you know, guys, can you just mute again? I'm not sure who it is. There it goes. Fab, we're nearly there, guys. We're nearly there. So if you're thinking, yeah, I'm all in for this, I'm going to give it a go. We've got the Facebook group, so have a look on Facebook, search for Nothing New in 22. The Sustainabilish website, I'm planning to sort of start a whole section on there with some stuff. There's quite a lot already on there, but I'll go through and categorize them in terms of podcasts and blog posts and things that might be helpful. And then both of the books, the Sustainabilish Living Guide and the Guide to Green Parenting, have a lot of these links and resources in there around secondhand and stuff like that. So if you want something that's going to be a bit more talking about everything rather than just buying and stuff to sort of kickstart your year, then they might be a good place to start. And I mentioned this very analog way of doing it. So this is the little table that I've created. You are obviously more than welcome to create your own table. It was just knocked up on Word. It's nothing particularly technical. But what I will do is I will put a copy of that in the files in the group if people want it just nice and easy to print off. Or obviously you can just have a page in your diary or a section on your phone or whatever. But like I said, what I'm really hoping to do is to be quite anal about it and keep a note of it. And then I really want to be able to maybe at the end of every month, or we save up at the end of the year and we do, whether it's a tree planting scheme or buying an acre of rainforest or whatever it might be, so that we can do something meaningful with that money. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can go and you know, hopefully spend it on something low carbon, but yeah, you know, it might be a nice way of because when we did it before, we didn't make a note really of what we saved, so it just sort of got absorbed and you don't really notice it, do you? So remember, that is the big takeaway I want you to have. There is no such thing as failure. So if you end up buying something new, no one's going to tell you off. And I really want you to remember as well, especially if you come into the Facebook group that we've set up for this, that everybody's starting from different places. So some people will have been doing this kind of thing for quite a while and it will be second nature to them, and it will, but I really want you to everybody to be aware that there will be lots of other people who, for this is really new, really challenging. They might be really struggling with it, and they might be like, you'll be like, well, just don't buy it. But they're actually, so we're going to be really kind to everybody, and we're going to be really compassionate, and we're going to say that, you know, there is no such thing as failure, and we're all kind of supporting it together. So Lisa's saying, so the group, Lisa, is if you search on Facebook for Nothing New in 22, I've linked to it in the big group as well, but I can pin it to the top of the big group as well. But do come and find that. I will send, when I send out this recording, I will pop a link to the group in there. I'll pop the little printable thing in there. So hopefully you can find everything that you need. So that is it from me. I know I've gone over time. Thank you to everyone who's hung around. Anybody got any questions? Anybody? I'm sure that everybody's got lots of questions. So you can either just unmute or pop something into the birthday cards. So we tend to kind of make our own now, Fiona. So yeah, what you could do is if you've kept old birthday cards, you could just cut the fronts off and use them as birthday card postcards if you wanted to do that. You could make an argument for the fact that getting some blanks, so there's a great website, who do we use? Can't remember, I'll try and find it and let you know, that do a load of recycled cardstock and things. So they do recycled paper blanks, and they so we had a, you know, I bought a stash of them ages ago, and then we just tend to sort of make our own cards. So I will often get the kids to do them if it's for their friends, or I will you know, if you can get hold of some old sheet music or old comics or something like that in a charity shop, you can use cookie cutters to cut stars or that kind of thing out. That can be really nice. Or cut, you know, number 5s or number 4s or however old the person is. So that kind of thing might be quite nice. Don't send me a card, Chloe says, donates to charity. Need to go in iron school uniform, oh Steph. Talking of school uniform, a lot of schools will have a second-hand school uniform sort of service set up, often run by the PTA as a bit of a money spinner, that's not the right word, it's a bit of a fundraiser. So do ask, and also if they don't, maybe you want to volunteer to set one up. I don't know, maybe, or maybe you could suggest it. So somebody was asking about important to me to support my local independent bookshop. Yeah, absolutely. So Samantha, maybe that's, and a few people have said that, maybe that's your exception. So, you know, we're all going to have our different values and our different sort of hierarchies of these kinds of things. So yeah, absolutely. If, you know, I'm a massive book addict as well. So it might be that you want to continue to support them, and that's, like I said, there are no hard and fast rules. You kind of do what feels good for you. Yeah, Rachel's saying as well, you can often get cards in charity shops. Is somebody trying to ask a question?
I was just going to, it's Paula Hardy. I was just going to say hi. I've just had a look. I think I've joined the right group, but there's a couple of Buy Nothing New in 22 groups.
Oh, mine's got the big purple smiley man on it.
Yeah, I realised that, but there's about 3 or 4.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's really great that there's a whole trend of people doing it. And so I'll post the link when I send this out. Where else? Beginners dressmaking course. So anyone else got any questions, or is everybody relatively happy? Like I said, you know, it can be as hard or as easy, you know, and somebody's hard is going to be somebody else's easy, and vice versa. That's absolutely fine. There's no judgment. This is all about doing something to help us to slow down our consumption, to help us to think a little bit more about what we're buying. Rebecca, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you would mind if I put the Tent Share website on the chat.
Whack it into the chat, absolutely, and I can send that out
thank
to
you.
resources as well.
Thank you very much.
Extra consumption of other consumable treats. We don't know what that means, Victoria. Tell me what that means. You can unmute and tell me, or you can pop some more into the chat if you want, whatever you fancy. Extra consumption of other consumables. I don't know. Oh, extra, yeah. So that's what you want to save up for, and you know, you want to spend all the extra money on chocolate. We are absolutely massively addicted to Tony's Chocolonely. in the Knackered Mums Eco Club, which is just the most to die for chocolate, and very ethical, doing an awful lot of work around sort of exposing slavery and things in the supply chain. So yeah, and so lots of people go, Tony's is the best. So yeah, absolutely knock yourself out with that. So Claire's feeling really motivated now. That's brilliant. So Lisa, yeah, putting your vote in for Divine Chocolate. So yeah, brilliant. Anybody else got their hand up or want to quickly ask anything? I'm just scrolling through, I can't see anybody else. So the Knackered Mums is a membership group, Gabrielle. So there's a small fee. It's £9 a month, or 99 for the year, I think, to come and join. And we have a different theme each month. And so this month we're doing sustainable-ish on a budget. We've done fashion, we've done food, we've done all kinds of things. So we have a Zoom like this once a month, and we have a book club, and we have all kinds of different things. Fab. Made me think and pass by buying 2 secondhand books today. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I could ever pass up a secondhand book. Cheryl. Brilliant. Right. So if nobody's got any more questions, I will let you all go. Thank you to everyone for hanging on for the extra time. Gabrielle, if you've got my email, or PM me on Facebook, because I can't cope with doing 2 things at once. So the Nothing New in 22, Julie, is on Facebook. Yeah, if you're not on Facebook, that's absolutely fine. Nobody's going to force you to come on Facebook. You know, I'm going to try and share as much as I can on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. So just look for that hashtag Nothing New in 22. And if you, if you're sharing something that you've done, I think this is a really, and I should have said this before, it's really important that we kind of talk about the fact that we're doing this with other people, with friends and family and people on our social media and things like that, to try to normalize it and to help other people to think as well. So, if you are doing it, just whack that hashtag in, or if you want to tag me, I'm sustainable-ish. So just tag me and I can reshare and things like that. But let's see if we can just get a whole little movement going and just get some conversations going. I think it would be really exciting, and to just draw people along with us as we go. People don't need to commit to the year, because that can feel quite daunting. But if you just want to do, people might want to say, oh, actually, I might join you for a month, or that kind of thing. You can challenge your friends to join you for a little bit, that sort of thing. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming and joining in. Thank you for all your enthusiasm. Thank you for all your questions. Really looking forward to seeing some of you in the group, if that's your thing, or just to bumping into you on social media. Shout if you've got any questions. Shout if you're stuck with anything, and we might be able to use our group power to sort of sort you out. So yeah, I'm excited for this now. I didn't mention, we've broken our electric car charger though, so that might have to be an exception if that can't be fixed. So I might not be starting January very well. Fabulous. Thanks, everybody. Lovely to see you. I will send out this recording. It's probably going to be tomorrow. But yeah, lovely for you all coming, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care.
Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Bye.